Today we're going to be making some stencils based on 1820s designs. Let's get started. For stencils, you want to find a paper that is thin yet has a hard surface to it. It's going to be thin and pliable like this. The surface isn't like what you would find on a cereal box. It's not porous. And then you might come across some board that's kind of maybe even twice or 3 times as thick, closer to what I believe they would have used traditionally. I've got a mixture of linseed oil and turpentine here. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. And we're just gonna brush it on till you see that the linseed oil and turpentine mixture is saturating through. Do want to do this outside. The fumes can be quite intense. The turpentine will dry off very quickly. If you recall, when you were younger, you probably made snowflakes, and you did that by taking a square sheet of paper and folding it into quarters like so, and then with your scissors cutting out whatever shape you found pleasing. And then when you open it up, you've got this nice pattern here. This is a similar design, and it's been treated with linseed oil and turpentine mixture to make it waterproof. So I want to show you now how I cut the stencil and what I cut the stencils with. I use basic knives. I've got 4 different varieties here. This one here is just a standard X-Acto knife, although it is a very heavy duty. This is a cool one I've tried out recently. It's got a nice swivel, so that's kind of fun to use for small details and intricate designs. And this is my standard, my go-to quilting knife, but it's got a regular X-Acto blade in it. And then this one is just a regular little stencil blade. I'm going to start cutting this out, and just going to follow my line that I have. Take it slow. So I've cut almost all of it here. We've got one more little piece to get, and then kind of give it a stab, and you can pull it up. If you got a little hanger on like that, just give it a little cut and it's gone. So it's just as easy as that. These are some of the paints that I use for stenciling. I like Liquitex, the artist color. I like the Liquitex, the Basics line. Windsor Newton has really nice paints and colors, and so does Golden in their acrylics. What you want to try to avoid is buying cheap paint. Cheap paint is not going to have good pigment, it's not going to give you good color, it's not going to give you good coverage, and it's going to be frustrating to you because the outcome isn't going to be what you had in mind at all. So spend some money and get some decent quality paints. Notice that the brushes that I have here, for the most part, are cut with a flat, blunt edge on the top. Plaid brushes that you can get just about in any store are the most common on the market, but they don't come with a flat tip always. Their tip is kind of rounded at the top, but I find it's best if you cut that top off and you get a little bit more stiffness to the brush. And then I take a pair of scissors and I will cut probably about this much off of the top and make it flat, like I've done with this one. While brushes are kind of the standard for stenciling, you might be tempted to pick up some other supplies. I particularly like using a natural sponge like this. You can see here that I've taken a few sponges and I've ripped them apart so that different parts of the sponge, different patterns and stuff will appear on my stencil and pick up different amounts of paint. There's some other options out there too. Makeup brushes. When you dip it in your paint and then apply it to your stencil, the surface will be a very flat paint coverage. To adhere your stencil to the surface, make sure that you've used a nice temporary spray. I've used the 505 and also this stencil adhesive with success. Today we'll be stenciling on a practice board. The most important thing in stenciling is less is more. You got to remember that less water, less paint is better for your stenciling outcome. If you're stenciling something that has multiple sections on it that are very close together, but you want to use different colors in each of those sections, I like to use a scrap piece of stencil board to mask off the different sections of the stencil. With a light color, I can always go darker, but if you start with a dark color, you're pretty much stuck. I find it helpful when I'm stenciling something that requires multiple colors to use a different brush with each color. The nice thing about acrylic paints is the cleanup is really easy. All you need is some water and a towel, a wet wipe, and you can clean up your brushes and your stencils too. If you wipe your stencils off right after you're done pulling it off of your stencil piece, you'll be able to reuse your stencil over and over. You want to peel it up carefully. I've got that sticky adhesive on the back. And slowly. There we go. I hope you've learned a little bit about stenciling and are ready to give this a try.